My name is Roxana Vilk. My father is British and my mother Iranian. They married in Tehran and I grew up there with my brother and sisters, surrounded by our extended family. We left 1 year after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, and I now live thousands of miles away in Scotland. I used to go back all the time, but since the breakdown of diplomatic relations between London and Tehran, I have been unable to get a visa. And I don't know when, if ever, I'll be able to return. In this programme, I'm going to find out how Iranian immigrants shape their identity as they build new lives away from their original homeland.
There's never a box for us. We're other.
From a tower block in Glasgow to meeting long-lost family
So long.
and travelling to Los Angeles, home to the largest group of Iranians abroad.
That looks like a Persian palace.
And there's a Mercedes right there.
They're peacocks. They like to show off.
Oh wow,
I want to work out how to pass on my heritage to my children when I can't take them to Iran.
Please can you not speak Farsi to me when I'm near my friends, because it's kind of embarrassing.
And how to reconcile the English and Iranian sides of my identity. North Berwick, a seaside town on the east coast of Scotland. Famous for its golf courses, beaches, and picture-perfect views. There are around 6,500 people living here, but as far as I know, I'm the only Iranian.
I walk this street alone.
For my sons, Miro and Darius, it's an idyllic place to grow up, right on the edge of the sea.
Fragments of memories lie twisted and turned at my feet. The bullet holes sprayed across the walls are all that remain.
My husband Pete and I are professional musicians. As well as singing in English, I also sing in Farsi, my mother tongue. I've been thinking we might have more commercial success if I only sung in English, but it's a really tough decision when I've tried so hard to keep my Iranian side alive. It's Iranian New Year, Eid al-Nowruz, which we celebrate on the spring equinox in March.
Have you got any hyacinths? We do.
I'm buying items for the New Year table, or haftzin. It's laid with 7 symbolic objects, including hyacinths, to represent spring. The next thing I need for my table is a goldfish, which represents new life.
Hiya.
And luckily, I found a neighbour kind enough to lend me her children's pet.
Just a pinch of food in the morning and he'll be fine.
New Year is a bittersweet time. It brings up so many memories of my happy childhood in Iran, but it also makes me miss all my extended family. I want to teach my children about their culture. I've never taken Miro to Iran yet, and I'm teaching him Farsi. So the whole thing is very strange and dislocated and abstract for him.
What does the vinegar represent?
Patience and wisdom. میدونی به فارسی vinegar چیه?
No.
Most of the time he's just like, oh mum, you're so embarrassing. Please don't speak Farsi to me when I'm walking to school. Don't speak Farsi in front of other people. Please, please, everybody speaks English here. You know, it's all about fitting in. And so generally his Iranianness is an embarrassment.
Sambu.
Sombol.
Oh, so close.
بگو sombol. So in a way, Eid is this one thing that I can say, look, this is our new year. It's Iran New Year. And obviously he gets a present, so that helps. And maybe by continuing the tradition, I'll somehow start working out what it all means to be a British Iranian, and I can kind of help my kids understand what that means too.
Eid al-Nowruz Mubarak.
Nice. I last went to Iran in 2008 to make a documentary.
ما میگیم جن پری چیزا هست توی آب. پس چرا میگم مثلا روزای چهارشنبه که میری مثلا صبح برو.
I filmed in the south of the country, a landscape that was so different to the north where I grew up. While I was in Iran, I visited my grandparents' old flat in Tehran. I found dusty photo albums of my mother and her family from the 50s, an era of rapid westernization, ballet lessons, American cars, and glamorous hairstyles. And there were forgotten memories of my own childhood too. I brought them back to my mother.
بچه که بودین ما شما رو از بچگی سوار جیپ می‌کردیم می‌بردیم.
یادمه که یادمه لب آب بازی می‌کردیم، یادمه می‌رفتیم جنگل، یادمه که همه فامیل دور و بر بودیم. یعنی هیچ وقت آدم احساس تنهایی نمی‌کرد. یه کسی همیشه اونجا بود. اینم همون ماشینی که باهاش همه جا میرفتیم، با جیپ میرفتیم.
یادت جیپ
سرمون له میشه.
میرفتیم یه ماه میموندیم که هم تابستون بود، اون با مامان بزرگ و پدر بزرگتون نزدیک باشین، چون اونا هم دلشون تنگ شده بود. اون پدر من میگفتن شما اگه رفتین اصلا مثل اینکه تنه درخت من رو زدن، ریشه من رو زدن.
Having to leave my grandparents behind was incredibly painful. Even though we would go back to Tehran and visit them when we could, I always felt guilty saying goodbye.
I remember everything. That's why it's hard. The old ways have changed and you can't bring them back. That's how it is. Life is like that. برای اینکه نسل اولی که میاد میدونه هویتش، آیدنتیتیش چیه. تو نسل دوم، your generation، ریشه ندارین. You don't have roots. You're trying to find your identity. میخوای هویت تو پیدا کنی. I know where I am. You know, I've got solid roots. من ریشه دارم. ولی نسل بعدی، جنریشن دومی میخوای ببینی کجایی هستی. واقعا هم برای شما سخته. نمیگم دلم تنگ نشده، دلم تنگ شده، ولی یه موقعی برمیگردم.
There are around 90,000 Iranians living in the UK, and over half of them live in London. It's a more visible community than when I first arrived.
When I was growing up in West London as a teenager, I had two very distinct groups of friends. My English friends that I'd hang out with at school during the week, and then my Iranian friends that I'd hang out with on the weekends at places like this. And it wasn't that I was embarrassed of my Iranianness, it just was simpler then to keep the two sides of my identity separate.
I often avoided talking about my background because it felt like I had to give a potted history lesson every time someone asked me where I was from. And like many teenagers, I just wanted to fit in. It's only as I've got older I've become more interested in understanding our history and the events that changed the course of my life. "1979, the Iranian Revolution. I was 8 years old. Amid violent protests, the Shah was forced from power. Thousands left, including my parents. The clerics took control under the supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini.
The major wave of immigration to the United Kingdom came, of course, in the wake of the Islamic Revolution of 1978-79. And we're not clear on how many came, but certainly we suspect that it would have been at least, in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, would have arrived. Many who came, who were attached to the old regime, and it was those that were generally well-to-do, probably were more familiar with Western culture, civilization, others, and so could adapt and settle down probably much easier.
As children, the revolution was a confusing time. We weren't told why we were leaving or when we'd be coming back. I often wonder if this uncertainty made it harder to feel settled and has left my generation with an enduring sense of restlessness. It's something I often talk about with my Iranian friends who left at around the same time. One of them, the author Karmin Mohammadi, confronted the confusion of our generation by writing what she calls a love letter to Iran, the cypress tree. I found her book really moving as she captured so much of the sheer beauty of Iran.
To the south is the long, languid stretch of the Persian Gulf, a lapis sea of fever and pearls. And up to the north, carried on the back of the sitting cat that is the map of modern Iran, is the Caspian Sea, foaming with oil and caviar. Ranges of mountains ruck up to the heavens, snowbound and magnificent, permanently cloaked in the clouds. The ancients called this Paradisa, and it's still our vision of paradise. Coming here in '79, what you saw on the TV was horrifying. I mean, it was shameful. It was all these men on the streets in Iran, really angry, punching the air, so much aggression, so much violence, so other, not just to the white people, but to us. So it was a really big disconnect because we left Iran and suddenly Iran turned into something that I didn't recognize. Because, you know, the media did a really good job here of, you know, turning Iran into one thing, which it still is now.
Which is what?
Dark, other. And I think we have a job to do because actually everything, all the attention that's given to Iran is so much on the other side. Iran would not be willed away. It was there on our screens, a collage of familiar elements made unfamiliar by their juxtaposition. There were the plane trees of Tehran's Pahlavi Boulevard, but they were providing the background for a march of revolutionaries. There were the familiar American cars like the ones we had owned, but instead of driving down the street, they were on fire by the roadside. We fled for our lives, as did thousands of others. We're a kind of 1.5 generation, in the sense that we were kind of kids when we came here. So we've had enough growing up and experience in Iran to remember it. But then you grow up in this other culture, so it's really confusing of not being certain that we're going to stay here. Because I don't think that my parents thought they were going to stay here forever. You know, so maybe, you know, maybe there's that difference, the point at which you sort of unpack.
Yeah, I always talk about this kind of metaphorical suitcase packed waiting in the room.
Metaphorical? Love, I've got 2 suitcases.
You've actually got 2 real suitcases.
You know, Bernardo, he says to me, I mean, can you put your bags down now? Can you stop being a refugee? But no, no.
Fears about Iran's nuclear intentions as it emerges they have a second secret nuclear facility.
The images so often played out on the news mean that, like Karmin, I've often felt under pressure to be a sort of ambassador for Iran and show there's more to my country. But with this role comes responsibility and guilt when I don't quite get it right. Little things, like the fact I can't cook Iranian food and that my Farsi isn't perfect, make me constantly feel guilty. I wonder if the guilt about being Iranian enough is confined to my generation, who were born in Iran but raised in the West. I'm back in Scotland to try and find out how more recent arrivals feel about their Iranian identity. How do they keep their culture alive? Samira's been in the UK for 5 years. She works as a beautician and moved to Glasgow with her boyfriend a few months ago. She's invited me round to try and improve my Iranian cooking.
سعی میکنم. من واقعا غذای ایرانی بلد نیستم. میخوایم چی درست کنیم؟
زرشک پلو. فکر کنم خیلی وقت نخوردی نه؟
When Samira first came to the UK, she was in a relationship with a Scottish-born Iranian.
شاید یه بک‌گراند مثلا از کالچر خودم داشت. ولی اینجا به دنیا آمده بود، بزرگ شده بود، حتی به زبون من حرف نمیزد.
پس فارسی حرف نمیزد؟
اصلاً حتی یه کلمه. که یه سری حرفا هست تو باید به زبون خودت بگی. یه وقتی هست یه حرفایی هست که حرف دلمه ولی هیچ کلمه‌ای براش تو انگلیسی نیست. نمیتونم بیانش کنم. ببین من چون مثلا الان با یکی از فرهنگ خودم دارم زندگی میکنم، با یه خوبشون البته، همه جا هم خوب داره هم بد. من نمیتونم بگم همه اسکاتیشا بدن، همه ایرانیا خوبن یا اینطوری. اگه هر جایی بریم با همین ترجیح میدم مثلا بیشتر وقتمون رو با هم بگذرونیم تو خونه. نمیدونم غذای بیرون دوست نداره، عاشق غذای خونه است. غذای ایرانی رو ترجیح میده. نمیدونم خب خیلی تنهاستونم اینجا، یعنی جفتمون عین همیم، هیچ کس رو نداریم اینجا. دوستم خونمون مثلا استایل خونه‌های خودمون بسازم، مثل خونه‌های مدل خونه‌های خودمون بسازم. از این چیزا لذت میبرم خیلی.
Samira is really confident in her Iranian identity, and it seems language is key to that. As a singer, there are certain emotions I feel more comfortable expressing in Farsi. Maybe, as Samira said, there are things you can't express in quite the same way in English. I've arranged to meet an Iranian linguist in the hope she can explain why I often feel like a different person when singing in one language compared to the other. In your opinion, is Persian a more expressive language than English?
I think first and foremost, the reason that Persian is so expressive compared to other languages, compared to English perhaps, is I think our fundamental love of poetry, our love of expanding on everything, on embellishing everything. For example, if you ask me to do something, just turn the light out, it won't just be okay, it will be chashm upon my eyes, which means let me carpet the floor with my eyeballs, the most precious part of my being, and you can step upon them. If I say thank you very much, another way of it would be qurbunet beram. I want to sacrifice myself for you. This is literally the way you sacrifice a lamb, a sheep, or whatever. Qurbunet beram. And then you say Khuda nakone, may God never allow this to happen. So on it goes, this tennis game of proverbs, anecdotes, playing with words and sounds of words.
It's fascinating to hear how the very structure of this language makes me communicate differently. I wish the boys could understand the playfulness of Farsi, but I wonder if I'm fighting a losing battle trying to teach them. Every morning I speak Farsi to Miro on the way to school, but he always answers me back in English.
چند تا goal score کردی؟
1.
It is so frustrating because I've been speaking Farsi to him for 8 years now. So I'm just hoping one day he'll just answer me back. Sometimes I ask myself, why am I doing this?
تیم فوتبال نورت بریک کی بود؟ تو و جیمی و بن و
Jamie, Ben.
My mother spoke Farsi to me, which is why I can speak, and I'm grateful for her doing that now later in life, and I'm hoping there'll be like a eureka moment for Miro later in life when he'll say, thanks mum, I really appreciate it. But it hasn't happened yet.
I often think there must be an easier way of doing this. What would it feel like to be an immigrant where you don't feel so self-conscious about your culture and it's normal to hear your language spoken out loud in the street? To find out, I'm going to the biggest community of Farsi speakers outside Iran, Los Angeles. Some of my family live here, but I've never been, and I'm excited to see if life is very different. Will being surrounded by Farsi speakers make everything easier?
We're on our way to Westwood, the heart of the Persian community in Los Angeles, apparently. Tehranjali.
Thousands of Iranians moved here in the wake of the revolution and set up businesses and neighborhoods where everything is in Persian.
How many Iranians are there in LA? Roughly.
Well, that's a great question.
Amy Malik, an Iranian anthropologist from UCLA who studies the diaspora, has agreed to give me a tour.
If you look at the census figures, it would be something around maybe 500,000.
In the whole of the US?
So you have a real disparity between what we have in terms of demographic figures and what people see and feel and experience.
There's some kind of reputation that Iranians here in Los Angeles have for being wealthy and for being maybe a little more demonstrative of that wealth than other groups.
Show that with their houses.
So there's a stereotype that Iranians build Persian palaces, and Persian palaces have typically been built as big and as grandiose as possible to the edge of their lots with large columns, lots of marble, maybe water features.
That looks like a Persian palace.
There you go. See, you've already picked one out.
It's got the columns, it's right up to the edge of the road.
And there's a Mercedes right there.
When you see a Persian palace, it's very much, we are here to stay. That's what it feels like to me, just seeing it for the first time.
Sure, and
how do you read it as an anthropologist?
I think a lot of people own big homes because they feel it is a mark of their success, right? And I think for Iranian Americans, I'm sure that's a piece of it. The other thing people think about Iranian Americans in LA is that we're very insular. And I think that reputation comes largely from that experience of you know, the hostage crisis and feeling the need to, once you get here, to support each other and to create a strong social support system here.
Which you can understand.
Which I can understand.
All Iranian diplomatic and consular officials have been declared persona non grata and must leave this country by midnight tomorrow.
The hostage crisis was a defining moment in American-Iranian relations. When US embassy staff were held captive in Tehran, the drama played out night after night on the evening news, with Iran frequently cast as the villain. Bijan Khalili arrived during the crisis. He set up an Iranian Yellow Pages shortly afterwards to help bind the community together.
این اولینه که چاپ شده؟
این اولین یلو پیجیه که منتشر شده بله در خارج از کشور بین جامعه ایرانی.
چند صفحه است؟
این حدود 96 صفحه است دقیقاً.
و مال الان چند صفحه است؟
بیش از 1000 صفحه.
و این یکی از
چپ به راست شروع میشه. اولین یلو پیج ما از چپ به راست شروع کردیم چون فکر می‌کردیم که در امریکا زندگی می‌کنیم باید از چپ به راست شروع کنیم. و بعد متوجه شدیم که نه نمیشه، این عملی نیست. واسه خیلی
این خیلی عالیه. پس این
مال سال دومه، یعنی 1982.
چرا نوشته go home؟
go home برای اینکه اون موقع در رابطه با گروگانگیری که در ایران اتفاق افتاده بود، بعضی از بخش‌های آمریکا یا اصولاً در شهرهای مختلف یه عده‌ای بودن که طرفدار این بودن که به ایرانی‌ها میگفتن برید خونه هاتون. وقتی اومدم انگلیسی مشکلی نداشتم، بعدا مشکل پیدا کردم چون همش فارسی حرف زدم و همه کتابایی که داشتم و اینا به فارسی بوده.
The Iranian diaspora here has evolved to cover large expanses of LA and has moved far beyond the stereotypes of insularity. There are still pockets where, like Bijan, you can go for days without speaking English. But a generation on from the hostage crisis, many wear their Iranian-American identity with pride.
Here's a hand-painted leather jacket.
Oh my God, that is beautiful.
Beyonce wore this.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Designer Hushi Mortazai has been playing with the images of Iran in the mainstream media for decades.
These are basically traditional leather wall hangings, and you know, there's the emblem of the Islamic Republic with the United States. So it's
wow.
the true immigrant merging absolutely together. Do you want to try it on?
I would love to try it on. Oh wow.
Kind of, I call it the Persian pioneer. Strike a pose.
That's amazing.
Hushi has designed clothes for celebrities, including Brad Pitt and Madonna, but his inspiration is from a land he hasn't lived in since he was 2.
This is the place where I find a lot of fabric, and it's kind of what I call the bazaar of Los Angeles.
He's taken me downtown, where you can hear Spanish and Farsi spoken more than English, to show me how Iranians have spread in this nation of immigrants.
Wow.
It's awesome, isn't it?
It's amazing.
A lot of these fabric shops are owned by Iranians. I'm inspired by the dynasty Tehrangeles aspect, you know, there's a whole like glamour quotient that goes on here and I love it, and you know, and I also protest against it at the same time as celebrate it. So I had to bring you here.
Yeah.
In the bowels of downtown LA, Tehrangeles glitterati love to come and buy their evening gowns for bar mitzvahs, weddings, parties, anything you want.
Oh my God.
It's quite a show, isn't it, here? I mean, that's the aesthetic here.
Wow.
That's what they all like to do in Tehrangeles. They're peacocks. They like to show off.
Yeah.
Of course, it's only one aspect of the Iranian community, but this opulence has given comedians here a wealth of material.
How are you guys? What's happening? Hello. Woo! Are there any Iranians here tonight? Any Iranians up in the hizzy? Yes, one. Really? We're in LA and one showed up? That is not cool.
Mars Jabrani is famous for playing on the stereotypes of Iranians in LA.
You know what it is? The Iranian community, ever since you're born, your parents tell you buy property. Ever since you're born. They're like, you're a little toddler. Kuchi kuchi ku, buy property. It will always go up. I have friends in their 20s who own buildings. It's crazy. You're at the bar, like, let me get a margarita, a strawberry daiquiri, and the building, we take the building, yeah. Turn to me, you want a building too? Make it 2 daiquiris, 2 buildings, not for mine.
Do you feel that you had an identity crisis of your own growing up as an Iranian in America?
I think a lot of immigrants go through this. You know, you come, your parents are very much from the old country, they have accents. I don't care if you're Iranian, Indian, Armenian, Mexican, immigrants, we're all in the bed together. I'm in the bed, my wife's in the bed, the baby's in the bed, my mother-in-law's in the bed. There's a rooster in the bed. My jokes aren't just about being Iranian, you know, my jokes go beyond that. You know, I've done jokes about my Iranian grandfather, and I've seen, like, in LA, and I've seen, like, Mexican girls laughing because that reminds them of their grandfather. You realize how universal our experiences are.
Do you have a metaphorical suitcase packed to go back to Iran at some point?
I'd love to go back and visit, but, you know, I've done some jokes that I don't know how it's going to be seen, so I don't even want to need to test the water. I'm good enough. I get my Persian food in LA and I'm fine. Then you go, you know,
like me, Mars is part of the 1.5 generation who left Iran as children. But there are now 2nd and 3rd generation migrants who call LA home. How connected do they feel to a country they've never visited?
I never really identified with being Iranian growing up. My parents moved here right before I was born and weren't able to ever go back, so I've actually never been to Iran.
Sheila Vand recently filmed in Istanbul for the thriller Argo.
So it was very bittersweet to be in Istanbul because I felt like everything was so familiar, but it was not the thing itself. Like, I felt like I could smell Iran from there. I just want to see where my parents grew up. I want to, like, touch the soil.
I'm having lunch with her and other actors and producers to talk about life in LA.
When I was growing up, there was not even Iranians around. I mean, it all happened at one time. It just was like this huge influx of Iranians, and then all of a sudden everybody's calling themselves Persian. And I'm like, what's that? I thought we were Iranian.
Will Ray, a producer and filmmaker, was also born in California. His family moved to America in the 50s.
My name is actually Shahryar Rayi, but nobody can say that. My grandmother had the foresight of giving me an English middle name, which was William. So immediately Will Rayi became Will Ray. And
I've always seen myself as an American of Iranian descent, really, even though I was born in Iran.
Reza Sixosafai moved to America as a child.
One of the greatest acting trainings I had was just coming back to America during the hostage crisis, wanting to be invisible in terms of, like, when my parents are speaking Farsi, don't want to be Iranian.
Those who went through the revolution and the really hard times aren't as excited, don't see Iran in the light that we do. Yeah. You know, all we've been raised with here is the culture and the kind of the glory of Iran. But they didn't see that. They saw the harder parts. I've never seen the bad things that happen in Iran. All I've seen of Iran is a fantastic time.
Tara Grammy was raised in Canada, but still travels to Iran regularly.
It terrifies me not being able to go back. That is my own personal worst nightmare. I have an aunt that, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I have an aunt that I'm really close to, and my dad lives there, and just not being able to go to her garden and just the smells and everything, just the idea of it, it just blows my mind. Like, that's home, you know? As much as I've gone there and felt out of place, very out of place, there's just something about where you're from and where you were born and what your blood is that's really hard to let go of.
I understand how difficult it can be not seeing your family. I haven't seen some of my cousins I spent my summers at the Caspian with for 15 years. My older cousin Mehdad now lives in LA.
Roxana?
Oh my God! This is so long.
It's so long, my God.
Does it remind you a bit of Shamal when you come down to the beach with the kids and everything?
Yeah. It was the best memories that I have of Iran was being at the Caspian Sea with all of our family.
And so what's it like now to live in LA, which do you feel like you're back home in Iran in a way? Or is it very different? What's it like? I want to know.
Look, I moved here 6 years ago. My wife's family all lived here, and when I saw how close they were and the lifestyle they had here, it reminded me of what we had lost.
What we had altogether. I have this constant dilemma with teaching Miro Farsi and about his Iranian heritage because he's never been there. I mean, how do you pass on a culture when you never go back to the motherland?
I want my children to grow up knowing that they're Iranian. And I think if you tell them about what makes Iran great, I think they'll have that sense of pride. If you learn about your history and your culture and you tell your children about it, they'll connect, and I think they'll love it.
I think you're right. I definitely want to bring Miro here, and Darius, and Pete, because I haven't taken him to Iran. And I think he might start to find some reference points and start to be a bit prouder of his heritage. I'm going to save up.
But in the cold light of day, I know being in LA isn't the same as Iran. And perhaps it's time to remind myself just how different the two places really are. Farzad Golpaygani moved here a few months ago. He spent years trying to get here. The BBC filmed him in Istanbul shortly after leaving Iran.
و هر وقت ایران بودین چجوری امریکا رو میدیدین؟
چیزی که توی فرهنگ جاری ایرانیای مقیم لس آنجلس من به نظرم اومد این بودش که فرهنگی که روزمره زندگیشون خیلی شبیه به چیزیه که هیچ جای دنیا از جمله ایران وجود نداره. توی فرهنگ حدود 30 و چند ساله گذشته ایران زندگی میکنن. این چیزی که تو ایران هم دیگه وجود نداره، چه از لحاظ سلیقه موسیقی، چه از نوع برخورداشون، فرهنگ جاری تو زندگیشون.
نسل ما اصولا یه دید انتقادآمیز داره به این جریان و این روندی که یه جورایی به موزه تبدیل شد.
Saba Alizadeh studies experimental sound. His work often raises questions about the images of Iran in the media.
این نخ بین ایران و اونا چون برچیده شد، اونا طبیعتاً یه خاطراتی رو داشتن با خودشون و طی این سالا برای اینکه اونو بتونن حفظ کنن مجبور بودن توش اغراق کنن، مجبور بودن رنگ بیشتر بهش بدن، غلیظش کنن طبیعتاً به سلیقه ماها اصلا جور در نمیاد، برای اینکه ما توی ایران بزرگ شدیم با تمام مشکلاتی که بوده و ایران رو دوست داریم و یه درک و بیان و مفهوم دیگه از ایران داریم که طبیعتاً با هیچ کدوم از چیزایی که اینجا میبینیم، با هیچ کدوم از موزیکایی که اینجا میشنویم جور در نمیاد و همیشه این دید انتقادآمیز وجود داره. آره بعدم آخه هر فرهنگ دیگه‌ای رو که نگاه می‌کنی فکر نمی‌کنم مثلا چینیاییم که الان تو چین دارن زندگی میکنن بیان چاینا تام بگن عین چینه، یا مثلا میدونی چقدر خوب فرهنگمون رو اینجا پیاده کردن.
It's clear that living in a large community like Tehrangelis can bring its own complications, especially for new arrivals. And living alongside thousands of other Iranians doesn't necessarily make things easier. I'm back in London with many more questions than I left with.
Being in LA and talking with the Iranian American community really helped me validate what I'm doing, because I saw that I'm not alone in asking these questions around identity and how you keep your culture alive on foreign soils. And also, I saw the contradictory ways in which your identity can be shaped by how, when and why you had to leave your homeland.
Why do some migrants seem to hang on to an idea of their homeland that no longer exists? And is this something that's just true for Iranians? Dinesh Bugra has studied the psychological impact of migration for decades.
Yeah, don't mind the mess.
What kind of impact can migration have on your sense of identity?
When you move into another culture, no matter whether it's forced or voluntary, you have to adjust. And those adjustments do challenge your sense of who you are. If you come from a sociocentric culture or a collectivist culture, by which I mean is that your identity is not who you are, but which kinship, which group, which tribe, which family you belong to. And if you move with that group, then your identity is pretty well intact in that sense.
My mum says to me that she's learnt to forget, and that's her coping mechanism in a way for dealing with the past. Is that something that you've come across?
It's very common. Again, people deal with memories in very different ways. Talking to people who migrated after the partition in the Indian subcontinent, there is a whole generation of people who do not talk about it. The trauma of the migration, the experience of the migration, what they left behind, it's all been locked up in the attics of their memory. And they just do not wish to talk about it, that it is somehow safer to do it that way. We as migrants also feel that the culture that we've left behind hasn't changed, but somehow we have. And then when you discover that the culture has changed, there's a sense of anger and angst. It's how dare it change without me.
The past few years have seen profound upheaval in Iran. When Ahmadinejad won a second term in 2009, many claimed the result was rigged, and there were protests in the streets. Like so many Iranians abroad, I held my breath as events unfolded online. I felt more closely connected, but further away than ever.
همیشه فکر کردم که خب اگر من ایران رو ترک کردم شاید فقط درخت و زمین و خاک و 4 تا ساختمون رو ترک کردم. کل ایران رو با همین لپتاپ انگار روی شونه‌های خودم کشیدم و آوردم اینجا. یعنی من از ایران اومدم بیرون ولی ایران از من بیرون نیومده هنوز.
Masih Alinejad is an outspoken political journalist. Her work means she can't go back to Iran, but it doesn't feel as though she's made a home here either.
Masih ما فهمیدیم که هیچ عکس فامیلت روی این دیوارا نیست. چرا؟
جالبه چون خودم هم تا بهش فکر نکرده بودم. شاید من اینجا رو هنوز خونه خودم ندیدم و دیوارای این خونه با من غریبن. احساسم نسبت به دیوارای صفحه فیسبوک خیلی به مراتب بیشتر از دیوارای خونه اینجامه. اینکه من اینجا زندگی میکردم ولی راجع به ایران مینوشتم چیزی بود که همیشه خودم رو گم شده فرض میکردم، چون همه چیز از تو کامپیوترم میدیدم، راهپیمایی‌ها رو میدیدم، آدمایی که باشون حرف میزدن، خانواده‌ام، همه چی تو کامپیوتر بود. ولی کم کم دیدم من از چیزایی میتونم بنویسم که دوستای من توی ایران نمیتونن بنویسن و این به من امید داد که خبر دور نگار هستم اما کم کم میتونم
با توجه به اینکه فرسنگ‌ها از ایران دور هستم کماکان توی بطن حادثه باشم و در مورد مردمی که دوستشون دارم بنویسم.
The internet has revolutionized the experience of migration. But even someone as forthright as Massey worries about the impact conversations online could have back home.
گاهی وقتا دوست داشتن یه آدم ممکنه برای اون آدم دردسر درست بکنه. مثلا من برم روی فیسبوک یک نفر بنویسم که دلم برات تنگ شده، ممکنه این دلتنگی من بشه یک جرم برای دوستم. خودم احساس گناه میکنم که میبینم پدرم زجر میکشه، مادرم زجر میکشه. من حتی نمیتونم گاهی وقتا پشت اینترنت به یک کسی که از دوستای صمیمی من عروسی کرده تبریک بگم.
Although Massey doesn't feel rooted here, she has a voice and an identity in exile she could never enjoy in Iran. And yet, even thousands of miles away, she still has to watch what she says to friends online. It reminds me of a passage in Carmine's book about the way in which so many Iranians are always watching what they say.
Everyone wears so many masks. The regime forces them to, that it can be hard to know who anyone really is. And I now understand the old adage that I was brought up with. Never trust anyone except your family. The paranoia and distrust that has always existed in Iranian society has made us Iranians masters of dissembling. Our very genes encoded with the ability to appear to say one thing while meaning something completely other.
From those who wanted to be invisible during the hostage crisis, or change their names to fit in, this rings true for many of the people I have met. And for me, it explains some of the confusion I felt about my identity. As a child in Iran, I was always told the walls have ears and to hide my true feelings from all but my closest family. I want to know more about the masks we've learnt to wear historically and how we became such masters of disguise.
They have zahir or batin, which is basically a concept in Iran, which is actually a political trick in some ways. So what you do is, in order to survive the traumas of political life in Iran through the centuries, you tend to have an explicit, an outward, an external presentation of yourself, the zahir, so to speak. And this is one side. But then, you know, what you have internally to yourself, batin, is something that's quite distinct. And I think that you see this, it's a nice way of being able to sort of transfer your location to another place, and these allow you to navigate these two sort of cultures quite well.
Even our language helps us remain elusive.
I think most languages are a great, they hold a mirror up to the cultures that use these ways of expressing their feelings, their thoughts, etc. And perhaps the political baggage sort of has a role in this, that it does not pay to be candid or direct to the point. It's much easier, much safer to be ambiguous, not to be able to be pinned down. You could wriggle your way out of situation. With some things in Persian, there is no other way but an indirect approach. A forthright, direct Iranian is a very rare species.
Maybe I've been hiding behind the indirectness of Farsi in my music. And now I'm starting a new chapter with the band as we begin recording our album. Exactly where I want to be. It has a strong family link because my cousin Nilufar taught it to me in our flat in Tehran, the flat where I grew up. And my mother would come in and go, no, it's not like that, it's like this. So everyone had their own version. So somehow the women in my family taught me that song. I understand now why singing in one language without the other can feel strange, as though part of me is missing.
Exactly where I want to be.
It's a constant balancing act trying to combine the two, And perhaps I'll always be struggling to get that balance right. I love Iran, but being in the UK gives me the freedom to live a life I couldn't there. And yet, like everyone I've met, I still feel a deep connection to my homeland.
My hope is that the diaspora will play an important role in bridging the gaps that there exist between Iran today and the international community. In a sense, bringing Iran back in from the cold.
I am an Iranian American because I grew up here, and that's the fate that I have, and I embrace both parts of it. And I'm lucky to have this, and I'm lucky to have that culture.
And you're asking me about my future? I think it's connected to my country. And if something happened to Iran, I see my future in Iran.
It's hard not knowing when I'll be able to go back. But as for so many immigrants, it's a compromise. And maybe I have the best of both worlds.
And I think now I want to keep drawing on the two cultures and mixing the two and never feeling like I've got to choose.
I'm starting to be more at peace with the idea that my identity is fluid. And I've realised that's just part of being Iranian. I'm just one of a nation of shapeshifters who have survived centuries of invasions and conquests, but managed to keep their culture alive. Sometimes in the most unlikely places.